All right. So this is the first round of the this is called Casual Players Tournament for World something. This is an interesting map. It's not particularly pleasant.
Right, all the resources are very far apart from each other.
A robotics HQ has been founded.
It feels like the classical conundrum of all the iron being in one side, everything else being on the other side. Except for
There's
that,
this nice double high carbon in the middle near a bit of water, but there's not much room to found in there.
yeah, it's actually very difficult to stick the HQ anywhere
A scavenger
in the area,
HQ
not to
has been
mention
founded.
having any place for production buildings. So Ladyball takes a very courageous, I want to say, found with
There
two.
are two
Yeah,
highs sort of nearby, so it could work out. Everything else is quite close, so that might end up being alright.
it actually looks
A
very
robotics
reasonable
HQ
given
has
the
been
overall
upgraded.
situation. Also, I'm a little bit sad that no one took the iron in the middle, which was the only iron that is close to anything.
A robotics HQ has been founded.
Hmm. That's another spot where it would have been hard to find a place to actually found, but yeah, it would have worked pretty well. Element
Pullman
instead.
takes a
Hmm.
very interesting spot. It looks pretty bad because
There's
it's
room for 4 buildings next to his HQ.
yes, but I guess the one advantage and the idea behind this font
The
is that
black
he's going to
market
take
is
the only
online.
water tile in the vicinity and make everyone else ship crazy distances if they want to get water.
He did get a combo tile too, so that's something. But that other iron spot you talked about, or those double high carbons, feel like they would have worked out a little better. We'll see what happens.
I will mention this is a power colony, and we have 3 robots in the game, so this, yeah, this is, we can start placing bets as to how high the
A
price of
robotics
power will
HQ
creep up.
has been upgraded.
Lady Volk starting with the carbon, food, and power. It's going to be a pretty slow start. Although power shortage coming down, already making a bit of power money, it might not be as bad as this sort of thing normally is.
Yeah, it's definitely a
A robotics
weaker start
HQ has
to the
been
game, especially
upgraded.
given that the price of water does seem to be pretty high from the
Right, she's
start.
been consuming a lot of water, and the farm is already unprofitable.
Yeah, you really need those adjacency bonuses to make
A
this kind of a
robotics
play work.
HQ has been upgraded.
And I feel like at this point, the, the problem with this found is that on HQ2 you kind of need to commit to one thing. Whereas, so you go either full power or full food, but this way you'll be stuck with one useless building because you still need
Right,
aluminium, you still need carbon, you still need water.
water, another power, and aluminum, I guess, would be the right thing. And just sort of live with the one dead farm. Going into a second farm gets that adjacency, but water is going to continue to be a problem now. Still running a deficit.
Not sure what the last claim for Lady Volk went. I'm not seeing it.
Um, hmm. Claim the silicon.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, that
that's it's not bad, but it's
A
not going to be
robotics
as good as
HQ
getting
has
more
been
water, I think.
upgraded.
right. That tile's going to be very valuable long term, but for now, it's just going to be a problem. Trat Pingvin going into a lot of wind. He's going to get a lot of money out of this.
Yes, but at the same time, he is the one who's shipping water crazy distances.
Also true. $228 a second on that water shipment.
Ouch.
Should probably turn that off.
Yeah, yeah. Once you're producing power, that the cash you're going to get from water is probably not going to be good enough.
Also, that goon placement feels like a bit of a mistake. Just because the wind is so important, you probably want to put it on the middle turbine. This does protect more tiles, but
Yeah, this is more of a long-term goon. Essentially, if you're not actually that afraid of getting frozen, you might want to put it there. At the same time, if someone wants to mind game you and just power surge the metal mine, this would protect a lot more tiles. So
Yeah, I guess there is an argument either way. Elman going into a lot of wind himself, Andreas with the 2 geos. Not many attacks going down on power besides that one surge, which is interesting with power creeping up to 300.
there's a lot of black market cooldowns available.
Maybe Volk sitting on a ton of cash. No longer after that upgrade, but 30k before.
Yeah, and this is why you really need to commit to that extra carbon tile, because the price of carbon was over 100 after that upgrade. And that's pretty brutal for a scavenger.
And just generally, that 2 carbon a second isn't going to get things done. It's going to slow you down quite a bit early on. 3 feels like the least you can really get away with for moving at a decent pace.
Honestly, I want to say that the 3 is kind of not enough, really. The 2 high carbons is really the minimum I would ever try to go scavenger with, unless there's a very special situation.
Right,
like a
long
6-player
term,
game.
definitely. But I feel like for the first 3 HQ levels, you can maybe get away with just the 2 lows or something. 2 adjacent lows.
I will say that everyone at this point is making power, and still it's over 200.
Elman getting close to making that power money, despite starting with, well, he's like deep in B debt when he started making power. He's going to end up making quite a bit of money.
Yeah,
Since those are all nicely
freezes
gooned.
on Tread Penguin are really, really crippling him at this point.
Yeah, that they are. It feels a bit overkill, maybe. I mean, I guess they're all pretty even, but it's just interesting that all of them are landing on Tread Penguin instead of maybe some attacks on these geos or something.
Yeah, well, that's sort of the problem with the geos. You kind of always assume that the geos are gooned, so...
Yeah, especially with goons up at 14k.
And when you can attack, make a safe attack against someone's wind turbines, but you really want to risk, even if only one of those is gooned. Although, I will mention that there's a thing called spies, and
Indeed.
I feel like it's actually worth more at this point to invest in a spy and invest in a dynamite than to keep attacking Penguin.
Definitely love using spies early on to scoop out goons. Although that does tend to leave me in a position where spies are expensive late and I have no idea where anyone's stuff is.
Yeah, well, on the bright side, since you raise the price of spies, someone else will also be a little bit underinformed.
Meanwhile, people do have hologram patent labs that no one seemed to notice.
Yeah, it's a very clever placement by Elman, with the potential to transition it into either a hacker array or a no-fault market. Probably a no-fault.
Right, it's a nice long-term move. It's really delays the start of your getting patents, but it makes sure to secure a potentially valuable tile later on. And it's something that's not going to get frozen, especially in his
Also,
position. He doesn't have room to
yeah,
actually put one down.
exactly. It's almost a forced play because you like, where else would you put it?
Well, teleportation will help him out.
Yeah, that's definitely. He probably needed the most out of all the people.
A robotics HQ has been upgraded.
And we're at this awkward point when power has crashed, and no one is moving out of it, because if you're the one who moves out of it, it's likely that it's going to get up there, and then you'll have a lot of debt, whereas someone else who stays in power is going to be able to keep his debt under control.
I feel like Chat Penguin in particular should be moving out of power though with that superconductor. That's something that you can very easily just get back into and make a ton off of if power climbs again.
Yeah,
Also getting nanotech, which will help out with that.
Yeah, worst case scenario, you should just
That's
transition the goon tile into an advanced building or something. Because you really don't need 3,
right.
like 2 is going to cover all of your costs for sure.
Right.
If he wasn't a robot shipping that water, I would even say that 1 is enough. But, that water is pretty brutal.
I guess that is sort of an argument for keeping down so much power. It makes sure that the shipping's never going to kill you. Of course, with this dust storm, it becomes absolutely ridiculous.
Yes, well, everyone else is kind of committed to power play, which is an interesting point for Andreas, because he invested into those geothermals, and he's the only one who can do nothing about reclaiming those claims.
Right. Elman in particular, I kind of have my doubts about these wind turbines being so far out. Yes, he has teleportation, but it's going to take forever to transition them. If he was planning on getting that teleportation, I'd much rather see a closer block of wind, even if it's slightly weaker, maybe worse adjacency, just much more flexible.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit wasteful, perhaps, because it also took a long while to build those. Even
Right.
though he wasn't really punished for it. He managed to make a lot of power money and get back into the game. That's an incredibly mediocre pleasure dome, which would have been a terrible pleasure dome if price of power wasn't at $1.
Yeah, 3 robots. That is another interesting point. With 3 robots and water being as awkward as it is, it still feels like people really committed to a lot of water.
Yeah, I've just noticed how much Andres is shipping as well.
So Elman might end up having the best bit with only this 1 water tile, which is a bit silly since he's the one with teleportation, but that's the way things work out sometimes.
I do not like how Lady Volk's claims are a little bit all over the place. They managed to secure a good bit of life support production at this point, which is going to make that pretty much non-existent for a scavenger. But I think even if they manage to push to HQ level 5, which still is super expensive because of the carbon price,
Right.
I feel like the lack of claims will really be felt.
Right, the 3 claims just dedicated to power, 3 claims in water. It always feels like a bit more than you can afford as a scavenger.
Yeah. I will say, though, that the early optimization center is a pretty strong play, exactly to counter that situation.
It does feel a bit unfortunate that there's no glass production down.
Yes. Now, that's sort of that is sort of the situation you will be in on this kind of map, because even though everyone has secured decent production of certain resources, overall the onboard prices should stay pretty high for a while. This is an interesting bit of aggression, which I hope Elman will be able to defend, and I hope he will. And I hope that Trad Penguin will move out of Elman, and this is just a move to try to get a little bit of cash, make him commit that cash to defending himself. Although he did manage to push for an offload.
And it's gone. But yeah, at this point, it feels like with that dynamite, it almost feels like Trad Penguin's really committing to this fight, but Trad Penguin doesn't have the off-world down or anything really generating a lot of money long term. So it's going to be a big problem for him if he doesn't sell out and actually start moving into making some of his own money.
Yes, he's the only one so far who has not committed to any advanced buildings, which is which is definitely not the way you want to be
Could this be a lesson
in
to you
FFA.
all? Screw with us, and we'll screw with you.
Well, none of these hologrammed off-worlds are hidden. Always nice to see. Also have to imagine that this patent lab's going to be switching into an off-world pretty soon.
Market is online.
The one at the colony.
Hopefully. There it goes. I will say though that if it's ever spotted, it's going to be in a very rough situation because both Dynamite and Magnetic Storm are available on the black market.
Right, and network viruses are still very cheap, so there's no easy way to defend it either.
Which is why it probably makes sense that he went for a close-by off-world by his actual HQ instead of opting for those ambitious high-value off-worlds at the colony, but also with a lot of risk.
Though he is building that second off-world before repairing his nearby one, so
And it just got an extra adjacency bonus from the colony. So, yeah, if people want to stop him, I feel like they need to do something about it now. But at the same time, he also really needs to drive up the price of dynamites into the sky before too long, because he still has not secured any stock on Track Penguin. And if he keeps delaying, it might be too late.
Trat Pingvin getting a... I'm not sure where he's making all this money from. I guess a lot of it was power.
Yeah,
None
power
of it-
spiked back for a bit. I think water was decent as well for a little. And also steel and iron are good. But
True. Still doesn't feel like he has a great path to finishing this by, but he's definitely... Okay, there we go. Off-world coming down.
I want to say that he's just a little thing that he's forgetting is to transition his aluminium mine, because he is one of the people who can do that easily, because it's right next to his base, and that
Right,
should
just
definitely
having
be a steel mill or an optimization center.
Could also probably transition out of these iron mines. Not sure what he'd put them into, but 1,700 iron, probably enough.
You can just make some remote production building like camps or more electronics even.
The off-world market is finished and
Suppose.
awaiting orders.
Did he pick up carbon scrubbing? Yes, okay. So those would both be very valuable.
Trying to break our stuff. Off-world
Hey,
market is
cameraman.
assembled. Our fortune awaits.
Alright, so there's finally some stock action that is not Elman related. So Lady Volk and Andreas are going for each other. Lady Volk does have an off-world, and it's an off-world by the colony, and it's not hologrammed, and it's not protected.
Yeah. She just was a bit behind for most of the game and no one really paid attention. At this point, with her getting into a fight with Andreas, this probably should be getting blown up, but we'll see.
Yeah, I really disliked the opening for Lady Volk. It was very slow, but at the end of the day, especially since she's so far away from everybody else, I feel like people just forgot about her.
What a payout.
Right, she was in a lot of the right markets, just not enough. Like, the commitments were too spread out.
Yeah, like the final situation, what I'm seeing at the colony, this is how a good setup does look, but the path to that setup was a little bit rough.
Right. Well, looks like Elman has a clear advantage over Trat Penguin right now. Well,
Yeah,
maybe not after this repair.
managed to catch up in stock, which I think speaks quite loudly about how he's getting back into the game.
The other fight, harder to call.
Yeah.
I
so
also don't understand the second Pleasure Dome. That had to have been built.
No, that was an auction.
Really, there's this. I guess I missed the second Pleasure Dome auction then.
Yeah, I saw it
Right.
happen. I didn't see how much was paid for it. I don't think a lot was.
I still would probably just move one of these pleasure domes into an optimization center or something. They're just not
The
good
engines
enough to have
advance for
2 down.
production.
Yeah, I'd say that instead of upgrading power, just sack one of those pleasure domes, and that's going to give you 1 unit of power. So
Successful off-world shipment. Make room for the profits.
Andres, yeah,
The
exactly.
adjacent off-worlds. It's brave.
Well, one of them is goons, so it's going to take a while to before they can be punished in
It's
combo.
true enough. The power surges are still so cheap that it feels inevitable that they will be punished.
It is interesting, though, that the off-world by the colony did not get attacked at all, so I have to assume that they just completely missed it. Because
Right.
the game is being actually kind enough to hologram it as an optimization center instead of a paid lab or something stupid like that.
It is interesting now that things can't be hologrammed as hacker arrays, which would have
Off-world
been the
shipment
obvious
launched.
building in the past.
Get all the money.
Yes, but at the same time, like hackery, you're kind of incentivized to spy on it anyway. So,
Fair point.
We're not surprised.
and unlike other
Just
buildings,
isn't
like
that
unlike the
market
patent,
is open
sorry,
for
the
business.
optimization center, you also kind of can figure out if a hacker is working or not just by watching the market and seeing what gets hacked and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Launch
So
affirmative.
Elman comfortable enough with his lead on Trad Pinkman that he started attacking Lady Volk.
Yeah, he does have a cash advantage. Well, the stock advantage is marginal, but the two offers are really going to bite.
Successful off-world shipment.
And I feel like as
Make
much
room for
as
the
Trad
profits.
Penguin would want to store cash to try to buy out Element, he really needed to invest in that second off-world.
Wait,
What?
what? What?
What?
Elman? Uh, okay. Well,
That
he
had to
wasn't
be a
punished for it,
misclick.
but guess that was a misclick.
He's actually selling out of Trad Penguin. That is.
I can't say I understand it. Maybe
Uh,
he's getting nervous about these other 2 players, but
yeah, that has to
Off-world
be it.
shipment launch affirmative. Want to pay money.
But I don't understand what his hope is. Then he just wants to ship by someone, but then you have to
also
be.
don't understand
Oh,
what Lady Volk is doing.
The off-world market is finished and
So
awaiting
she had
orders.
very close to enough to buy Andreas.
yeah, that's the big problem. Now all of that money is sort of wasted, and you can't really get back half of it.
Of course, the cash plus resources number can be very misleading since it gets all bugged out when you're repairing off-worlds.
Yes, and generally having to cancel launch is just so annoying that a lot of people don't do it. But there is the buy, and Element finishes the buy, which has to be a somewhat questionable move, even with two off-rolls versus the one that Trad Penguin did. As this is
Because you're only getting half of the 2 off-worlds anyway.
yes, and it's very possible that Trad Penguin is still not going to make enough in time to get
Well,
Element,
Andres is probably
but
going to finish the buy on Trad Penguin before,
yes, exactly.
which just leaves Elman in a terrible position.
And there comes the first power surge on the two off-rolls, so that should give him a little bit of time, but
Make room for the
It's a
profits.
very lucky bounce too, going straight to the second off-world.
yeah, at the same time Andres
Our methods continue
almost
to
has
improve.
the buy and should be able to get there before these, and there we go.
So he's stock advantage. He has a lot of dividend revenue over Elman. It's hard to see what Elman's edges here. Guess he has a slightly better off-world
Well, it has to come from the black
and a bit more
market.
cash too.
If he can keep those off-worlds frozen for a while, that might be his ticket to win this game.
That could work, yeah.
Affirmative. What a payout. The black market is online.
Especially since Trad Penguin's going to take a while to get off the ground.
You would not believe who we caught red-handed.
Well, that was a fairly expensive dynamite.
Right, and it's a thinking machines off-world, so it's hard to see if that was really... No, that is definitely worth it with the off-world prices being as they are.
Well, the question is the repair price is also harmful, and the repair price is actually tolerable.
Right, especially with the quarter cost of thinking machines.
It's a little bit surprising that life support did manage to creep up in spite of all the optimization and just insane water production.
With 800 food going off-world every 60 seconds, well, less than 60 seconds even. Not too surprising.
I guess.
Also, Trad Penguin's not in any food.
Yeah, I don't think he was actually.
This virus is a bit weird. Just on the electronics.
The engineers have advanced our production.
I'm noticing that Andreas did
Black market is
full
open for
optimization of
business.
food, which is producing a crazy 8.25 per second. Which for once I'm not fully totally opposed
Successful
to,
off-world shipment.
because food is getting
Make
pretty
room for the
high.
profits.
Yeah, it's a reasonable move, certainly. Although he shouldn't be launching water if he's going to be producing so much food. Well, he shouldn't be launching water regardless, but especially not if he's going to be doing this.
Off-world shipment launched. Look at all the money.
And apparently we got really lucky with this bounce.
Only froze one of them.
Well, they're even on cash, but obviously Elman needs quite a bit more to actually finish the buy. And at this point, Trad Penguin is making almost 2,000 per second. I will
Right,
say... sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just that misstep with the stock is really costing Elman. So I'm not sure when Trad Penguin's second off-world started going up, but
I
once
think
that did, then the buy made more sense that way.
it must have been right at the end. I think it happened pretty late, because he was with only one off-world for a very long time. If you take a look at Lady Volk, though, that was an insane amount of money. So he's kind of justified a little bit, because it was producing over 3,000 for both of them together. So it's almost as much as Trad Penguin was making for Andreas at the end.
On the other hand, Elman never got his stock back. He paid pretty much. He paid 75% of what he would have paid for Trad Penguin to get only half of Lady Volk. It just doesn't work out.
Yeah, it would have been. It's actually possible to argue that it's a better sub, but at the same time, this stock boost is much lower that way.
I think it is reasonable to argue that if things had continued as they did, and Andres did pick up the buy on Lady Volk, which I'm not sure would have happened, then Elman would have been in a disadvantageous position anyway, but he definitely didn't help matters for himself.
Alright, well, all the results are reported by ever vigilant organizers. And also, I think we're the last group, so we're going to move on to the next game. Maybe let's take a look at some charts. Yeah, this carbon definitely was a big problem. So yeah, I finally remembered to look at the charts for once. I can see that almost 200k on carbon for Lady Volk. That's the biggest expenditure, which definitely shows why they were a little bit out of contention in a way. I guess I think their position would be just so much better if they had played the early game correctly.
Right, that found was definitely better than we given it credit for. Just
Yeah, I was not impressed initially, but then it sort of turned out that it's actually the single best found in the map. And also you can see that Elman made almost 5 times as much off-world as Strat Penguin did. Well, obviously he wasn't game for longer, but still, just those off-worlds really did matter a lot.
right, and that colony off-world paid off big time. Bit of an odd combination of moves going for thinking machines and the colony off-world, but worked out.
Well, I mean, he didn't really have much of a choice. He did commit to that off-world essentially early on, unless he was going to stick an optimization center there or a hacker ray, which by the way was pretty decent building potentially that game.
Right, I think there was definitely a lot of opportunities to hack something like Glass that game.
Absolutely. I think like if you have a game with scavengers and robots, then there's no way that all the markets are going to be consistently covered. People will be transitioning between markets, and that's your chance to sort of strike with the shortage.